allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sylvia, roll call.
Mayor Clark?
Here.
Council President Harris is in the building somewhere. I'm sure she'll be here in a moment.
On her way.
Councilor Henderson?
Here.
Councilor Kuiper? Here. Councilor King?
Here.
Councilor Browse?
Here.
And Councilor Robinson is absent.
Thank you. So before I continue with our agenda, we have had a tragedy in our nation. And so I think that it's appropriate that we have a moment of silence for our Orlando community. Thank you. The Sherwood community stands with the Orlando community, and we are very sorry for your losses. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Amended agenda.
I move we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Consent agenda, approval of June 7th, 2016 City Council meeting minutes. Resolution 2016-033, approving the city recorder's canvassing of the election returns of the May 17th, 2016 Washington County election and directing the city recorder to enter the results into the record. Resolution 2016-034, authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Black Line Incorporated for the 2016 Slurry Seal Program. Resolution 2016-035, certifying the provision of certain municipal services in order to qualify the city to receive state revenues. Resolution 2016-036, authorizing the city manager to execute a construction contract for the Woodhaven Park construction. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve consent agenda.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Council. And we are going to have a presentation recognition of an Eagle Scout Award recipient. I see that Kyle Davis is with us. Won't you come on forward and go ahead and sit and push the mic until it turns green for us. Welcome, Kyle. Thank you for coming. And we would all love to hear about your Eagle Scout project.
For my Eagle Scout project, I took pictures of headstones in the Valley View Memorial Park Cemetery, and I transcribed those images online to make it easier for people to do their family history work.
Oh, very nice. And so how many people did you have helping you with this project?
About 20 for the picture taking, and for each of the transcriptions, there's about 5 to 10 people helping.
Wow, fantastic.
And where was the cemetery?
It's southwest of Newburgh, just outside of it.
Oh, Valley View. Okay, and how many headstones did you cover?
I think it was somewhere around 1,000.
Wow.
How did you determine that project?
I've been interested in family history work for most of my life, and it was a project that other people had been doing and that we heard about, and so I decided to do it for mine too.
Very cool. Council, do you have any other questions?
What a project.
Very neat.
Great
Well,
project.
this becoming an Eagle Scout is something that takes a great amount of work and dedication. And so here in the city of Sherwood, we want to honor and thank you for working so hard to achieve your Eagle Scout. And so let's give Kyle a nice big round of applause. Okay, and so Sylvia also gave me the proclamation for the Sherwood Robin Hood Festival. Now, I will be reading the proclamation at the Sherwood Robin Hood Festival on Friday in Veterans Park at the knighting ceremony, where one of our own will be knighted. But this is sort of a tradition that we open up the Robin Hood Festival by reading the proclamation. But I will proclaim this here tonight as well, in case anyone that is watching tonight or here tonight is not able to attend the knighting ceremony for the Robin Hood Festival. So the proclamation is Sherwood Robin Hood Festival 2016, July 15th through 17th, 2016. Whereas since 1954, the Sherwood Robin Hood Festival has been a long-standing tradition in the city of Sherwood. And whereas the Sherwood Robin Hood Festival Committee is made up entirely of volunteers from the community who have willingly given countless hours to make this memorable and successful event for the community. And whereas the 15th and 16th of July have been set aside for the Sherwood Robin Hood Festival. Whereas the International Archery Shoot between the Sylvan Archers of Sherwood, Oregon and Nottingham, England will be held the 16th and 17th of July. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Chrisanna Clark, Mayor of the City of Sherwood, do hereby proclaim July 15th through the 17th, 2016 as Sherwood Robin Hood Festival weekend in the City of Sherwood and call upon all of our citizens and the surrounding communities to participate fully in all of the festival ceremonies, activities, and events. And I absolutely encourage you to do so. So I will read this again at the Robin Hood Festival. Citizen comments? Do I have any citizen comment forms? All right. We will move on to new business, Resolution 2016-037, adopting the capital improvement project plan for fiscal year 2016 to 17. Kathy Bruker.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Council has received a copy of the capital improvement plan updated for fiscal year 2016-17 through 2021-22. The staff report that you have before you tonight contains the CIP summary detailing the individual years and ties with the approved projects within the FY 2016-17 budget document that is up for adoption tonight. The approval of the CIP is necessary for the expenditure of certain funding sources, but it is only a plan. The CIP will continue to be scrutinized annually for revisions and updates. Then if you have any further in-depth questions regarding that, Julia is here and available to answer questions.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions about the plan? So I think that the important piece here is this is a plan. It's only a plan. In fact, it states right in there, it's only a plan. It's not a commitment, nor does it obligate funds. It's a plan. And so you can't move forward at all without a plan. So this is the plan we've got, and we'll have lots and lots of opportunity for input along the way. But I think that this is something that is a great start. So thank you, Kathy. And so with that, I will move that we adopt Resolution 2016-037, adopting the capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2016 to 17.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Council. Resolution 2016-041, transferring budget expenditure appropriations between categories for budget year 2015 to 16. Kathy Bruker.
Thank you. Before you tonight is the resolution to balance out budget appropriations for FY 2015-16 with actual expenditures. With additional activity posted through mid-June, one last review is made with a conservative approach towards budget to actual balances. And in order to remain in compliance with Oregon budget law, we determined these two adjustments would be prudent for the end of the year. This resolution does not increase expenditure authorization within the general fund. It only moves money from one division, Public Works, to two other divisions, Community Development and Community Services. Additional appropriation is needed in Community Development to help offset personnel costs that were originally budgeted out to capital projects, but remaining in the general fund due to development schedules. Community Services also slightly exceeded personnel costs due to increased activity. We will need to move an additional $10,000 in, but is fully offset by additional revenues earned within events and volunteers. They're currently coming in $10,000 over what their revenue projection was for the year. So they're doing very well. Overall, the effect of these transfers on beginning fund balance for FY 2016-17 will be minimal.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Council, you have any questions? So in many ways, this is basically a cleanup?
Yes, very much a true up of it.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So hearing no questions, I move that we adopt Resolution 2016-041, transferring budget expenditure appropriations between categories for budget year 2015 to 16.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor King. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We will now have a public hearing. Sylvia, could you read our public hearing statement?
The Sherwood City Council will hold a public hearing this evening to receive testimony on 5 items on the agenda. Ordinance 2016-008, amendment to Chapter 16.31, Industrial Uses of the Sherwood Zoning and Community Development Code. This is a second reading on this ordinance. Ordinance 2016-010, amending Section 16.162.040 to allow public and private parking lots on a residentially zoned lot within the Old Town overlay. This is a second reading on this ordinance. Resolution 2016-038, declaring the city's Sherwood election to receive state revenues. Resolution 2016-039, adopting the schedule of fees as authorized by the City's Zoning and Community Development Code, establishing fees for miscellaneous city services and establishing an effective date. Resolution 2016-040, adopting the fiscal year 2016-17 budget of the City of Sherwood, making appropriations, imposing and categorizing taxes, and authorizing the city manager to take such action necessary to carry out the adopted budget. The purpose of these hearings is to allow the public an opportunity to submit testimony on the above said items. The order of business the council will follow is to hear a staff report, receive any correspondence, receive public testimony, and then additional staff comments. Questions from the council will follow. The hearing will then be closed and no further testimony will be received. Any interested person may present testimony. If you wish to speak, please fill out the testimony form and submit it to the city recorder. The mayor will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the mayor. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be recorded, and limit your testimony to 4 minutes.
Thank you, Sylvia. So we'll begin with Ordinance 2016-008, amendment to Chapter 16.31, Industrial Uses of the Sherwood Zoning and Community Development Code. Julia?
Thank you, and I do have a brief PowerPoint presentation, which I think Mark is going to unmute here in a moment. But this is the second reading, so I'm going to breeze through it fairly quickly. So quick background, Tonkin Employment Area was brought into the urban growth boundary in 2002. We developed the concept plan in 2010. And at the time, we were really focusing on trying to target the types of uses we really wanted and make it conditional use or a little bit more process to get other things that were more that were compatible, but maybe not specifically what we wanted. And we realized recently that when we did our code update in 2012, we unintentionally made changes that resulted in very few industrial use types actually being permitted or conditional in that zone. And so we began a code update process, and we had a series of work sessions with the Planning Commission and the public to discuss the types of uses that we wanted to see, not only in the employment industrial zone, but all industrial zones, with the idea of really trying to be more general with the types of uses that we are okay with, and more specific with the types of uses that we do not want to see in the city. So we had work sessions, we provided notice as required by state law and our code. We also, if you recall at the last hearing, we adopted it, approved the ordinance and asked for it to be put on the next available schedule, but that actually was fairly full, and so we actually postponed the meeting till this evening, and we did provide additional notice of this meeting because we didn't have a specific date certain. So that was provided on May 31st. Notice was mailed to industrial property owners, posted around town and published in the newspaper, as well as mailing to interested parties. A quick review of the criteria that the plan amendment, the text amendment needs to comply with. It needs to be based on a need for such an amendment identified by the council or commission. It needs to be consistent with the intent of the comprehensive plan and with other applicable state and city regulations. In the staff report and the planning commission recommendation outlines the findings that demonstrate compliance with all the applicable criteria, including the comprehensive plan, Chapter 4, and economic development and industrial planning designations, as well as the Metro Title 4 standards. The Planning Commission did recommend on April 12th approval. They heard a lot of testimony and considered a lot of information and forwarded that recommendation. They did make some additional changes or recommended some additional changes, which are included in the proposed changes, and they unanimously recommended approval to the City Council. Since the Council initially approved during the first reading the ordinance, we did provide additional notice. We did receive additional testimony, which I believe Sylvia got to you from Ms. Bernard. And then also staff, as we always do, continue to look at the information, and we are recommending that council may consider an additional change. As we're continuing to look at the standard for public and private utility structures, including but not limited to telephone exchanges, electric substations, gas regulator stations, treatment plants, water wells, and public works yards. We realize that in the employment industrial zone, that area is undeveloped and untapped, and we really do have specific types of uses and specific vision for that area that those types of uses just being outright permitted may not be compatible in all situations. And so we actually are recommending that council consider making an additional amendment to that planning commission recommendation of approval to make that conditional rather than permitted. And if the council decided that you wanted to do that, in the staff report on page 246 of your packet, I've proposed a motion that you could consider making to do that. Other than that, I don't have any additional information, and we recommend that you hold a public hearing and consider adoption of ordinance 2016-008. Do you have any questions?
I just have one question, Julia. Oh, okay, no, never mind. I see you're pointing out. Thank you.
Okay.
I got it. So, council, did you have any questions for staff? Okay. Did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question with regard to this notice from Ms. Barnard. Is there a concern about her losing her well?
I'm not sure if there's those issues would really be addressed when that area is brought into the city, and when there is an actual site development proposed. We would be looking at what the impacts are, both on the site that's being developed as well as off-site impacts if that were to apply. I think she's a concerned property owner, but I don't think the proposal. I know the proposed amendments don't change that.
Okay. So then if and when an application comes in, we would be able to better address her
Yes.
concern. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll open up the public hearing. Do I have any public hearing? Okay, I have no public hearing testimony applications, so I will close the public hearing and I'll return the question to council. Council, did you have any other additional questions for staff, or did you want to make a motion?
So I just have one clarifying question. So for conditional use, that really just provides the city a little more flexibility and to identify or when infrastructure is being built, how it would be built and screening techniques, that kind of thing?
Exactly. It just allows a little bit more discretion in terms of, do you limit hours of operation? Do you require more setbacks? Do you require, additional screening, those types of things? So it just gives us a little bit more opportunity rather than if it's just straight permitted. If it meets the criteria, it's quasi-judicially approved and you don't have any say. And frankly, there really aren't any specific criteria for that type of use. So it would be really challenging for staff and the Planning Commission ultimately to apply any additional conditions.
Okay.
Just one question. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Julia. So could you briefly summarize, I was at the Planning Commission hearing when we talked about this. How would you describe these changes being of benefit to development for Sherwood in the future in these industrial areas?
It provides more clarity, more certainty of what types of uses are allowed. Again, the idea was we're going to be more general with what's allowed and specific with what's not allowed. So rather than having uses that say you can make transistor radios or you can make clocks or you could make a book, and then if you don't fall within the categories of things that are specifically listed, then it's questionable about whether or not you can make it. We're saying you can manufacture things, but you can't manufacture these types of things. So that's the idea, is that we're trying to be a little bit more inclusive of things that we don't know, things that haven't been invented yet, but providing more specificity on, we don't want noxious odors, we don't want certain types of things in our community.
Thank you. Well, I think that I will take our staff's recommendation and make the motion. I move that the proposed code changes shown in Exhibit A to Ordinance 2016-008 be amended to change public and private utility structures, including but not limited to telephone exchanges, electric substations, gas regulator stations, treatment plants, water wells, and public work yards from P permitted to C conditional in the EL zones.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. No. Yes. Oh, we just did it. No. I just did the amendment.
Oh, jeez.
And so now I'll accept.
So I move that we read, caption, and adopt Ordinance 2016-008, Amendment to Chapter 16.31, Industrial Uses of the Sherwood Zoning and Community Development Code.
As amended.
As amended.
Second.
Ordinance 2016-008, amendment to Chapter 6.31, Industrial Uses of the Sherwood Zoning and Community Development Code. Counselor Browse? Aye. Counselor Kuiper?
Aye.
Counselor King?
Aye.
Counselor Henderson?
Aye.
President Harris?
Aye.
And Mayor Clark.
Aye.
She needs a little paddle.
I think so. Thank you. Ordinance 2016-010, amending section 16.162.040 to allow public and private parking lots on a residentially zoned lot within the Old Town overlay. Brad Kilby.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor and Council. So as you indicated, this is a proposal by the Urban Renewal Agency to make public and private non-accessory parking a conditional use within the Old Town overlay on residentially zoned properties, provided that they are located on an arterial or collector, and that the lot was vacant as of May 1st, 2016. That really only applies to one lot, and that's the lot that's behind Ray's Produce. As Julia mentioned in her last presentation, there are three criteria that have to be met. One is that there's a need established by the Planning Commission or City Council. Two, that the proposal meets the transportation planning rule, in essence doesn't affect the functional classification of any of our streets within the transportation system plan. And three, that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. You made those findings at the last hearing, and the Planning Commission also agrees with those findings and made a recommendation to the City Council to approve that amendment. This was originally scheduled for our July 19th hearing for your second reading. It was bumped up to this meeting, and we did, in fact, send out public notice to everybody that testified and everybody that sent, everybody that we originally provided notice to as well. We did not receive any public comment, and in fact, we didn't receive any public comment once the language was amended to include the language that says as of May 1st, 2016. So with that, staff recommends that you conduct your second hearing, and we recommend approval in place of the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Brad. Council, do you have any questions for staff? Okay, I'll open up the public comment time. It looks like I have one from Eugene Stewart. Come on forward.
There you go. Oh, you turned the
One?
Darn it.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go.
Good.
There we go. Two 50 by 100 lots over here and moving that parking lot over to a 50 by 100 parking lot? That makes no sense to me if that's what's happening. And if it is residential, why don't we rezone it to commercial, what it's going to be? Also, you're revising the comprehensive plan. Maybe that's the time to do that, not now. Also, it comes back to there's been kind of a piecemeal planning for parking for businesses downtown. And I understand how this all started. I was on the Citizens Planning Committee that did the original plan, and it was fairly simple at that time. You had about 4 or 5 blocks downtown with the new zoning ordinances. Once a business changed ownership even, they then would have to have provided off-street parking under the new codes, which was impossible to provide. So therefore, you had a small area downtown that was exempted from no parking requirements, which made sense. Then we had a landlord who put in a business and found out, well, she was outside that area, and she cried to the city council. And so, in their wisdom, they took all of Old Town and said no parking requirements for any development. Until you look at that policy, and I believe you need to change it, you need to identify where you're going to park. Because right now, I can tell you, with 503 on Court and Clancy's in the evenings, the streets around here are fairly well filled up. Then what happens if you have a good big production going on across the street? Nobody has sat down and counted the number of cars, spaces you need for cars for people to come and enjoy those events. Or what happens if you do get a restaurant, say, that would go across the street. If you have an event in that building, they can seat, if it's a restaurant, they can seat one sitting. Then there's no parking. People will not come to that restaurant. They'll go broke. Guaranteed. They need to have guaranteed parking or they cannot survive. You ask anybody that's in the restaurant business, that's what they'll tell you. And you look at the good restaurants, that's what they have. So I think at this point, you should just put this on hold and get a comprehensive review of the whole downtown area and come up with one good plan, not a plan that's mishmashed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other additional? Okay, I'll close the public comment section and return it to council. Council, any Questions, comments? Do I have a motion?
Brad, could you come back to the table, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So when you were up here earlier, you clarified what lots would apply. A number of the residents who expressed concern about this code change, one of them says, tearing down homes that are a fabric of our community will only to replace them with scabs of asphalt patches peppered throughout the heart of our city is poor planning. Just to clarify, you said only one lot actually meets the two criteria of no buildings existed on May 1st, 2016, and frontage on an arterial or collector street.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. There are two adjacent lots that the URA owns that are 50 by 100. One of those lots is zoned residential. The other is retail commercial.
Right.
So it would be permitted on the other lot, but the lot that's zoned residential currently, it's not allowed. And just for point of clarification, we do require parking in Old Town in the Cannery section of Old Town, but we don't require it in the Smockville portion of Old Town.
So are there any other lots that would qualify under this zone change?
No, ma'am.
In the no parking standard required section of Old Town?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a follow-up question on that. There's a lot that's on the corner of, well, it's right across the street from the dog wash station, right adjacent to Symposium Coffee. What about that lot?
That's zoned commercial.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
We're just specifically talking about residential. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions for staff? Do I have a motion?
I'll move we read, caption, and adopt ordinance, 2016-010, amending section 16.162.040 to allow public and private parking lots on a residentially zoned lot within the Old Town overlay.
Second.
Sylvia?
Ordinance 2016-010, amending section 16.162.040 to allow public and private parking lots on a residentially zoned lot within the Old Town overlay. Counselor Browse?
Aye.
Counselor Kuiper?
Aye.
Counselor King?
Aye.
Counselor Henderson?
Aye.
Council President Harris? Aye. Mayor Clark?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Resolution 2016-038, declaring the City of Sherwood's election to receive state revenues. Kathy Bruger.
Thank you. The adoption of this resolution is an annual requirement to be eligible to receive state shared revenues. This specific revenue is derived from a portion of the liquor tax and is anticipated to generate $210,000 into the general fund. The other revenues received, liquor, cigarette, and vehicle tax, are all based on population estimates determined by the state. So staff recommends that City Council adoption of Resolution 2016-038, declaring the city's election to receive state revenues.
Thank you. I'll open up the public comment time. Do we have any public comment forms? Okay, I'll close the public comment time and return it to council. Council, do you have any questions for staff, or do I have a motion?
I move that we, I move that we adopt Resolution 2016-038, declaring the City of Sherwood's election to receive state revenues.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Resolution 2016-039, adopting a schedule of fees as authorized by the City Zoning and Community Development Code, establishing fees for miscellaneous city services, and establishing an effective date. Kathy Bruger.
This resolution encompasses the annual update to the City of Sherwood fee schedule. There are quite a few this year, and all changes and updates have been explained within the staff report and on the accompanying summary table. Rather than review each one listed, unless you want me to, I was basically referring back to the staff report and asking or requesting, are there any questions that you may have off of that?
Okay. Council, do you have any questions for staff? Okay.
I just have a couple of questions. just for my own clarification, could you give me an example of a utility operator that does not sell services within the city limits? What would that be? What would be an example of that?
This is dealing with the
The franchise fees and the privilege taxes and other associated fees.
and with the telecom.
Right.
And we don't have Brad here tonight
What
to
would
be
be an
able to.
example?
These were the new ones that were instituted in relation to the telecom. And I do apologize.
I can chime in for just a minute. Or go ahead, Joe.
You want to take a stab?
I don't believe from conversations with Brad that we have any currently, but this is a trend that we're seeing in the telecom industry where telecom companies are putting facilities in the right of way. They're not providing services directly. They're reselling. They're
They're just going through the community.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
And we didn't have a fee to charge, and they're using the public right of way.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense to me. And I have another one question. The other question I have is under Section 7, System Development Charges. For sewer SDCs, Clean Water Services is increasing the sewer SDC by 4.3%.
Yes.
When was the last time that they actually did an increase? Do they do this every year?
Every single year. Yes.
At 4.3%?
I believe.
It varies year to year.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, okay, and then, okay, and they do that with the storm sewer services as well. Under Section 8, miscellaneous fees, what's a suite? What does that mean? 11 to 20 suites and up, and 21 and up suites.
Yes, so that's the addressing. So if you've got a development that might be addressed under one address, and then there's suites within that.
Yeah, yeah, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Council, any other questions? Okay.
I guess I have just a comment. We have recently seen a trend in that the field house is no longer breaking even. And I see just a small fee increase, but it doesn't have anything to do with the field. It doesn't have any youth and adult teams. It's $50. Is that the only field house fee that was requested to at least be reviewed?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Okay.
it is.
I'm going to have Kristen Schweitzer come up.
Great.
Could you push the mic? Thank you, ma'am.
There we go, sorry. So the team fees went up, as you mentioned, by $50. The daytime fees also went up just a little bit, from 35 to 40. And the birthday party fees went up from 110 to 150.
One more time, 110 to?
110 to 150.
Okay.
And then the open play fees went up from $4 to $5. So none of this is going to necessarily make up the difference. We're just trying to slowly bring things up to make sure that we're staying competitive and being in the market and not pricing ourselves out of the market at the same time.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So those were the only ones, the team fees, the daytime fees, the open play, and the birthday parties.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kristen.
Any other questions, council? Okay, I'll open it up for public comment. Keys?
Excuse me, Tess Key, Sherwood, Oregon. I just had a question. I don't know if this is the proper place to ask that. I'm wondering how arbitrary miscellaneous fees are, who decides that, and what entities provide those, and what things besides the obvious would be affected by that. Things I don't know, where would I find that information about fees that were going to be increased, or what does miscellaneous mean, I guess, basically is what I'm asking. And how defined is that, and how, I mean, I guess I don't want just somebody saying, hey, we need an arbitrary fee here or there without there being some guidance. And so that's the question I'm asking. Thanks.
Thank you. Kathy, could you make a comment, or Kristen, on what miscellaneous fees might be?
Yes, certainly. Within certain not each category, but certain categories, there are miscellaneous fees such as under police and then under engineering. So I'm seeing those there. Engineering, Julia, do you, as far as capturing those, or police fees, if you have any comments on those, but they are basically, particular to that category. I see under police fines and fees, it's copies of photographs, fingerprinting, records of background checks. And then under engineering, there would be, again, specific ones. I can find those while Joe has something.
And instead of identifying every fee, I think we lump miscellaneous because we have fees for a lot of services we provide and things like that. We have a master fee schedule that every year the council adopts, usually at this meeting when they're adopting the budget. So I think we use the term miscellaneous to encapsulate numerous types of fees rather than specifically highlighting each of the fees that are in the fee schedule.
But they are all listed out in the fee schedule.
They are all
there's
listed
no
out.
arbitrariness in it. It's all listed in the fee schedule.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, I think that answers the question of the public. All right, thank you very much.
I have one more question.
Okay, yes.
At the very top of the schedule of changes, you have staff rates, 200% of the hourly rate. Now it's going to be fully loaded. I assume that's an industry standard. I always wondered where 200% came from. So, and will the new accounting system keep track of that, and that will not have to be calculated by hand?
We calculated it at the time of the budget preparation, so it's very easily verified and checked and recalculated if necessary.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, I have another public comment. Eugene Stewart?
Eugene Stewart, 22595, property owner in Sherwood. Question I've got is, I don't know if water fees are included in this section, but it seems a little strange to me is that if you're looking at selling property where one of our wells sits now, why are we not at least looking at, I would assume, since we're not using the wells that much, water level tables have been coming up. So therefore, why can't we use some of that water and give it to the citizens for watering their lawns, gardens? Has anybody looked at those costs? I mean, how much water, and do you really, is that a reserve we have underneath this? If it is building up, shouldn't we be using it? Wouldn't it be nice if the city and the businesses in Six Corners got together and turned all that brown landscape out there to green, so when people drive through, it looks a little more appealing? That's probably one of the ugliest spots in the city, and that's where everybody goes through, and it looks horrible. And, if we had irrigation, for the schools and everything like that, should they not have a, if we got the water down there, I can't see where it costs more than pumping it over from the Willamette River all the way over here. Seems like that's got to be fairly inexpensive water. Why are we not blending it in to a proportion so that we can help control what people are paying, plus give them the opportunity to use more, and then also increase your revenues in the water department? And on the 4.5% or whatever that the sewer keeps, why don't the city mayor, the mayors of the cities get together and protest to Washington County? Why do they let them keep pushing that through? That seems to be always something that comes up. I mean, they have public hearings, but nobody from the city here goes to it. Maybe that's something, the city staff should be putting some, and the council voicing an opinion to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Did you want to make a comment about?
Well, this question about the using the wells. I'd rather have
Wells.
Craig Sheldon come up.
Okay.
'Cause
Craig, you wanna-
this question's come up before.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think it comes up a lot, and so I think since we're going to be talking about budget, I think this is appropriate to bring our staff and just address this issue that seems to be on a lot of people's minds.
Good evening. As far as piping, new pipes would have to be put in the ground for irrigation, just to use well water for irrigation without going to the property owners, because it's all tied together right now. You would go with some sort of a gray water. As far as offsetting the cost, our wells are put into emergency stand mode right now with the state of Oregon. They are, we had a lot of complaints about markings from the wells when we actually had the wells in people's toilets, on people's cars, people's fixtures. We don't have those complaints anymore. If you were to use the well water to offset, you're going to drive the costs up at the plant because your supply and demand would not be the same. So where you're paying $1.34 a unit, I can see that cost going up for the residents using it. So
Water
from the treatment plant, if you were only use a certain amount from the treatment plant, I would say the water costs, supply and demand would go up because right now both agencies are using water and it's driving the cost down. I believe Wilsonville's cost has went down as well since we went online. So that's kind of the short. It's not that you could not do it, but we do not have the water quality complaints that we used to get with using well water today. Very few calls come in on water quality complaints, and that's what we used to get, is a lot of water quality complaints from the well water. And so that's the offset of that. We could go through a process and put them back in line through the state, but then you're probably going to be doing some more sampling, and those costs come up too. So supply and demand is what I can tell you at the plant right now. Those costs would definitely, because how it's structured, would change.
Thank you, Craig. I'll close our public hearing. I don't have any additional forms. Okay, I don't have any additional forms, so I'll bring it back to council. Council, do you have any additional questions for staff, comments, or do you have a motion?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I'll sort of piggyback on Gene Stewart's comment. So when I do the math on page 3 or 4 of our packet, we have the staff report, and if I add it up, just to clarify, it has sanitary and storm rates are increasing 3.9% and 2.7% respectively due to a rate increase from Clean Water Services. And then sewer SDCs are going up, which is a sewer system development charge, 4.37 and 2%. So if I do the math, just for sanitary, rates have gone up in the last 4 years 21.8% from Clean Water Services.
Except that, Joe, didn't you say that 4.37 is not the same every year?
Yeah, I'm not talking about SDCs.
Oh, okay.
I'm just
Sorry.
talking about sewer, like
Okay.
what we pay to
Okay.
flush our toilets.
Got it.
So it was 8%, 6%, 3.9, and then 3.9 again this year.
Got it.
So that is the other half of our water bill that we collect on behalf of Clean Water Services. So I just want to make note that, I mean, you know, we obviously are part of the sewer district, and they set their own rates, but 21.8 seems like a lot, especially when we do all the maintenance inside our city on our storm and our sewer. So just want to make note of that. And of course, that's something that we, it's sort of a pass-through for us, and don't really control it, but it might be a good time to get a seat at the table in the near future.
Agreed. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Do I have a motion, council?
I move that we adopt resolution 2016-039, adopting the schedule of fees as authorized by the city zoning and community development code, establishing fees for miscellaneous city services and establishing an effective date.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Resolution 2016
Mayor Clark, sorry, prior to, I would like to recuse myself based on the recommendation from the Oregon Ethics Commission and pursuant to ORS 244020. I will be declaring a conflict of interest in regards to the final vote for the 2016-17 City of Sherwood budget due to the reference of the City Recreation Center and the operator, the YMCA.
Thank you, Council Browse. Resolution 2016-040, adopting the fiscal year 2016 to 17 budget of the City of Sherwood, making appropriations, imposing and categorizing taxes, and authorizing the city manager to take such action necessary to carry out the adopted budget. Kathy Bruker?
On May 12th and May 19th, the Sherwood Budget Committee received the budget message and heard public comment. Then on May 26, 2016, the Budget Committee approved the proposed budget with the following changes, resulting in the approved budget for FY 2016-17. Changes consisted of increasing the City Manager Department by $10,000 for the Robin Hood Festival contribution, and also adding a code compliance position of 0.50 FTE to the Planning Department and reallocate the code enforcement officer from 0.50 to 1.0 FTE in the Police Department, a net cost of $31,352, and then reduce water operations by $75,000 with removal of a duplicated project. The notice of the approved budget has been published in accordance with Oregon local budget law. The final steps of the budget process are for City Council to hold a public hearing per ORS 294.453 and then adopt the FY 2016-17 budget. Staff respectfully request City Council adoption of Resolution 2016-040, adopting the FY 2016-17 budget of the City of Sherwood, making appropriations, imposing and categorizing taxes, and authorizing the city manager to take such action necessary to carry out the adopted budget.
Thank you, Kathy. So I will open up the public hearing. I have one public testimony. Alan Pearson?
Madam Mayor, councilors, as you may remember, last year and again this year, I'm running for city council, and my primary plank is protecting Sherwood's tax dollars from unnecessary and wasteful spending. A position I think is absolutely more relevant today, given the fact that you approved the May 15th ballot initiative that limits the increases in revenue and fees. When I ran last year, and I'm assuming I'm going to get it again this year, question came up, give us an example of unnecessary and wasteful spending. Well, I have one for you now. Your budget includes a $60,000 part-time police officer. First of all, I consider $60,000 for a part-time job to be rather excessive, since an awful lot of Americans don't make $60,000 a year working full-time. Secondly, the city manager thought this position was unnecessary, and I agree with the city manager. I come back to the fact that we paid for a rather expensive police survey that said, in essence, the police department is adequately staffed. You want to add another part-time position to a department that's already adequately staffed. Additionally, they talked about, and used a very interesting term, called proactive, where our officers are 2/3 of their time is proactive, which in English means they're waiting around trying to figure out something to do until something happens that they need to act. So I would argue that the problem is not hiring an additional staff person, but better management of the staff that you have. If you have 2/3 of your officers' time waiting to do something, reassign, reorganize your department so this person
or people can perform this function. Taking money to pay for this position from the contingency fund does not solve your problem. I always assumed that a contingency fund was designed to handle an emergency. Creating a permanent part-time position is not an emergency. It's a line item. And the money has to be replaced. The contingency fund is there for a specific purpose, to meet emergencies. The money has to be there. You're going to have to raise fees and taxes to fill this job. The people who voted in May to limit fees and tax increases were sending a very significant message, which was, we think you're spending too much. And we'd like you to stop. And this is the way we think we can make you stop spending. I didn't personally agree with the position that they took, but that is the position they took, and this is what we have to live with. There are a lot of things we want to do in Sherwood, but we can't afford it. We have to stop spending. This is not what I would consider a necessary position, and I would consider it to be wasteful spending. And I hope you will reconsider this position before you finalize this budget. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, I'll close the public hearing comment time, and I will bring it back to council. Council, do you have any additional questions for staff? Comments? Okay, anyone? All right, well, I have a comment. I spoke about this at the budget committee. I actually voted against the addition of the half-time additional code compliance officer for several reasons. The first being it's unnecessary spending. According to the police department staffing study that we paid good money for, it says that we as our citizen stated, have proactive time available to patrol officers averaging 69%, and that we are currently fully staffed at an appropriate level, and that there's no need for additional police staff. So to add police staff when our staffing study says we don't need it, when our city manager is not only not asking for it, but also is recommending in his letter to the budget committee against it. And additionally, on the citizen comment of what the police staffing study got, the citizen comments from citizens, code compliance officer is not in the request. So of the requests that people made who did want additional police services, there were several requests, none of them being a code compliance officer. There was a school resource officer, a additional police officer, additional service. There's nothing here about code compliance, and yet we are asking for code compliance. I don't see that as something that is top tier priority to dip into our contingency fund. Additionally, I think that if this is something that citizens do happen to want, that it's something that we can consider in the future after we have received our inquiry request back from Washington County, when they make a proposal and we consider them taking over our night service, perhaps there will be an opportunity for us to say, maybe there's a way that we should reallocate our funds in the police department. Maybe we want to have more school resource officer. Maybe we want to have more code officer. But at this point and at this juncture, the numbers don't add up. We're asking our citizens to pay for something, that our study says is unnecessary. That doesn't seem to me to be fiscally responsible budgeting. So I will not support a budget that increases our budget in this way. And I will move that we remove the halftime position that was added during budget and return the $31,352 to our contingency fund.
Did you just move that?
I did.
I would second it.
Any discussion on the item?
Sure, I'll discuss.
Okay.
So first of all, just to clarify, there's code compliance and then there's code enforcement. So code compliance is generally someone who, and this is the way it was proposed, a half-time position in the planning department that would go through code compliance, and then it would be up to this, would then become a full-time position in the police department to do enforcement. So that's where that split is. So there's code enforcement and there's code compliance. When we discussed this in the budget committee, it was a really close vote, and I have been thinking a lot about this particular issue, and I've talked to a few citizens. And one of the things that I have been concerned about, and have always been concerned about, is adding staff when we have PERS to deal with, which is the Public Employee Retirement System. Looking in the next year, and maybe in the next couple years, maybe staff, Joe, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but about $250,000 of additional operating costs are going to be incurred. $250,000. And I don't know if that's just next year or if that's over the next 2 years. Is that just next year, Kathy? So that's $250,000 that comes right off of our bottom line that we have to pay to PERS. Would I love to have a code compliance person? I would. But it's difficult for me to look at a $250,000 additional of our budget that's basically just going to come off our bottom line, because our revenues are flat, folks. We're not bringing in a lot of revenue right now. It's flat. So we're lucky to have it flat. Some cities are losing money. But because of good fiscal responsibilities, we've done pretty well. So I'm not in favor of it. As much as I would like to see us have a code compliance person, I think it's much easier to hire someone than to let them go. I would like to see us find out what happens over the next couple years as the city deals with the effects of PERS and how we're going to pay for that before we bring on a half-time position like this. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comment?
Yeah.
Counselor King?
Well, I just want to preface everything that's been said that back in the budget part of this process, the reason why I think the people who voted the way they did was because the officer that was doing the evidence / code compliance or code enforcement, we wanted to divide that up. Because I think we're at the point now, Captain, if I'm wrong, that the position for the police department, that person's going to be handling all of the evidence. It's not going to be a divided position, right?
Just for clarification, he's always done the evidence?
No, I know he's always done evidence. Like it's getting to the point now where the evidence is, there's so much of it that he really can't be divided, doing other things other than evidence.
Yeah, since he's been here in 2008, it's continued to go up as far.
And it's going to go up even more because we're going to have cameras,
correct,
all the officers. So there's going to be a lot more information to process and evidence to process down the road.
Yes.
That's the reason why we wanted to separate that person from doing code compliance and move that part of it to the planning department, which puts it in a better place, actually, if I'm right or wrong. But anyway, that was the thought behind the people who voted, was to allow the evidence person to focus solely on evidence and then to do the code compliance through the planning department. So, and that would make it much more efficient because from my perspective, the code, whether it's code enforcement or code compliance, not to disparage anybody who's been involved in having to do that, but it's very hard to do when you have your duties split up. And there's things that, as far as livability issues in this town, have not been addressed or have, they're whether it's signs or anything else that goes on with code in the city, it's been neglected. And that was the reason, I think, at the point of when we were addressing this issue during the budget, when we decided we wanted that person to go to the police department and deal with that issue full-time and have another person do with this issue from another department. So, and as far as PERS is concerned, I mean, this half-time position is not what I would consider a PERS. A PERS one person. It's not the same cost. So there's different tiers now within PERS. So I just think it as an efficiency issue, having that full-time position in the police department dealing with evidence and solely evidence is a much better process and way of addressing that issue financially than having that person dividing up their time. So,
thank you, Councilor President.
I don't disagree with Councilor King. If this, in a perfect world, if this was my money, I am a big advocate for a code compliance officer. There are plenty of things around the city that I would like to have addressed, but this isn't my money, and I think that the people who money that we're spending clearly told us they didn't want us spending that money in fiscally irresponsible ways. And based on our police staffing report, the police department doesn't need any more staff. There's probably some reorganization that needs to take place and to help with evidence. That's obviously important. And probably on the grand scheme of things, the code issues that we're seeing a lot of, I know for many of us, it's the signs around town, probably not quite as important as evidence. But again, if it was my money, I would be all over spending it for code compliance officers. Some of those issues that the code compliance officer deals with drive me crazy when I drive around this town. But it's not my money, and my citizens said, we don't want you spending it if you don't have to. And even if you have to, we want you to justify it, and I don't feel like this is a justified expense. So that's why I also voted against the position, and will again tonight if we have to.
Thank you, Council President. Councilor Henderson, did you want to speak?
Yes.
Okay.
So pretty clear how this vote's going to go, but I'm going to go ahead and summarize it similarly as Councilor King did. So this was a motion that actually Councilor Robinson and I made together. She's unable to be here tonight. And one of the reasons that we made this motion was that we feel strongly that code and evidence do not belong in the same department. Evidence is a top priority, if not one of the most ultimate priorities besides providing the actual public safety for property and personal individuals, and I think they should be divided up. In the staffing study, it was one of the recommendations is to create a community services officer and make that a full-time position who does basically police work and evidence. That was a recommendation under support services as opposed to patrol, so non-sworn. That's on page 95, 96, and 97 of the staffing study. Ultimately, he suggested 2 positions as we continue to grow in the department, in addition to expanding the volunteer services. As far as the vote, at the budget level, we talked about this extensively. The vote was 8 in favor to 4 against. I don't necessarily consider that to be a close vote. It was Councilor Robinson, Chair McConnell, Kutsky, Kurt Studer, Councilor King, Councilor Kuiper, Councilor Browse, and myself all voting in favor. And then I guess I have a hard time rationalizing giving $10,000 away to the Robin Hood Festival, who I wholeheartedly believe in. Those are taxpayer dollars. Those are coming out of what we would consider to be general fund or potentially contingency. And this, I think, it's been an ongoing issue the entire time I've been on council, and I think it's because we haven't had a dedicated effort as far as compliance as well and being proactive, having somebody who can go out and meet with employers and business owners to help them understand our code. When the mayor, as well as Mr. Pearson, likes to comment about 69% proactive time or idle time. I guess I would be less happy if our officers were 10% idle and had 90% all the time something to do, a call to go to, somebody to take to jail, a property crime to investigate. So when I look at 69% proactive time, I would compare it to when I worked as a lifeguard. You sit on your stand. Technically, you're idle, but you're looking, you're anticipating, you're waiting, you're watching, and you're waiting for something to happen. That in itself is proactive. So I think it's a disservice and an insult when we categorize that time as an inefficient use of staff. I would say that's the reason why we have such low crime. That is why people move here. We have per capita the same amount of officers we did as in 2005, but yet we have a lot more people living here. So I don't necessarily agree with that as being classified as just wasteful time or mismanagement. I don't classify it as that. Having done multiple ride-alongs, including 2 with code officer, I considered it to be tenacity. And out there patrolling is the reason why crime goes elsewhere. And I think this is a long time position that should be filled for livability purposes, for the same reason we voted for adding library staff because of the library levy. Joe has been talking about this for 3 years, that this position should not be code and should not be evidence combined. It should be moved over to the PD. 3 members of our budget committee also voted in favor of creating this position. There is, we're still balancing the budget, are we not, Kathy? With the addition? Right.
It's in balance, yeah.
Right, so it's in balance. And then in Joe's budget, unless you change that figure, Joe, we have $45,000 budgeted for a study to determine whether or not the city at one point could run the rec facility. Do you want to talk about PERS liability? Every single position in that building would be a PERS employee unless they work 10 hours a week. And PERS is going to go up and down, and I don't like to make decisions based on threat. I don't think that's an appropriate way to legislate, and I don't think it's an appropriate way to make decisions. You can have a lot of planning, but to blame PERS on everything sounds like an excuse and not rationale. And that $45,000, we will never get that back. That will be spent with a consultant. We'll get a
Counselor, could we keep to the topic?
Yeah, when we get back to that, when we get that amount, or when we get that document, then we will put it on the shelf. But I think this is a livability issue, and would also like to see where we would get money for other projects, like in the future of paying the council.
Okay, again, we're going off topic, so I'm gonna, oh, okay.
So
Counselor-
I'm sorry, Councilor Kuiper, that you voted for this to begin with and you thought it was a good idea. And I felt passionately about this. So did Councilor Robinson. However, she is not here tonight. And this is something that I think our community needs. It's clear to me it's not going to happen. And it's unfortunate that other members of the Budget Committee agreed with it. And now they're being told that their opinion was less valued than it was perhaps when we finished the budget.
So if I might address some of your comments.
Go ahead, Councilor Kuiper.
As you might recall, members of the council, as well as some of the Budget Committee members that are here in the audience, this was a topic of great discussion, and there were a lot of Budget Committee members that were on the fence about this. There was a big discussion about a lot of different things, and after doing some consultation with other members in my neighborhood and talking with people about this, my decision is that I believe that this, while I don't disagree with a lot of what you said, I absolutely would love to have a code compliance person that's sitting in the Community Development Services Department. And I hope that we look at this again next year. But I have 250,000 reasons to change my mind, and they're all in the form of dollars. That's not a threat. That's the reality. That's not a threat. That's the reality. $250,000 of our operating costs next year are going to come from our general fund. That's 250,000 reasons. And I don't take that lightly. I don't like signs cluttering up, sign everywhere, a sign, right? But just because my feelings have changed in terms of whether to include an additional staff on this year's budget does not mean that we cannot revisit this issue again next year or the year after. It's going to happen. It will happen. It needs to happen. But I'm not so sure that it needs to happen in this budget year. The second item I want to address about $10,000 to the Robin Hood Festival, and Mayor, I understand that this is not part of it, but I do want to address what you've indicated. That $10,000 to the Robin Hood Festival is contingent upon something. It's contingent upon the Metro's Community Enhancement Grant Fund. When we were in the Budget Committee, there was a motion to give the Robin Hood Festival Association $10,000, and there was a big conversation about that until one of the Budget Committee members, Susan Claus, suggested that why don't we budget for $10,000 for the Robin Hood Festival Association for this year, contingent upon whether or not they get the grant that they have indeed applied for through the Metro Community Enhancement Grant funding. If, in fact, they get that grant funding, then that $10,000 stays put. It stays in the budget. So I think that needs to be clarified there. And I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the table to return that $31,352 from the contingency to the general budget. It has been seconded. It has been discussed. I appreciate everyone's comments. I will always side on fiscal responsibility, and this is a fiscal responsibility issue in my eyes. That's why I made the motion. I think our police department is fantastic. I think they do a fabulous job, but this item was not necessary according to multiple sources. So that has been moved, it has been seconded, and now we will vote on it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay.
Motion carries. Thank you, council. We now need to discuss the amended budget. So do I have a motion for the amended budget approval?
So I move that we adopt Resolution 2016-040, adopting the fiscal year 2016-17 budget of the City of Sherwood, making appropriations, imposing and categorizing taxes, and authorizing the city manager to take such action necessary to carry out the adopted budget as amended.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay. Motion carries. Thank you, council. City manager? Oh, no. Heavenly stars! Who are you from? Wow.
Oh, my.
And I
Joe?
did not anticipate him coming tonight because this is in honor of Jeff Groth, our police chief, who couldn't make it tonight. So we were going to do this in July. So I apologize to you, sir, for the miscommunication and misunderstanding. So you are here, and you can certainly, if you choose, I don't know how far away you came, if you want to do your presentation tonight. Chief Groth isn't here. He's on vacation, which is why we didn't want to do this tonight. So... Okay. So how far away did you come? Just out of okay. So why don't you come up if you don't mind? I'd suggest
absolutely
that you
do
come
not
up.
mind. I'm so sorry, sir. Please come forward for your presentation that I was unaware of. And introduce yourself after pushing the button there. That's totally fine, but just push the button so it turns green for us, and we'd love to hear from you.
Push it, so there it is. First of all, my name is Colonel Herb Hurst. I'm a retired U.S. Army. I'm a Department of Defense outreach representative for the Employer Support to the Guard and Reserve Program. And just a few comments about that. What is the Employer Support to the Guard and Reserve Program? First of all, let me emphasize the word employer. It's a program designed to help employers because of the deployments and the training of guardsmen and reservists. Now, you may or may not know that fully 50% of our nation's military resides in the Guard and Reserve. And if you look at what's going on in the world, you can expect there are going to be more deployments. Matter of fact, we've already got a warning order to start expecting them. And we do a lot of work with reservists and guardsmen, helping them with their deployments. Now, interestingly enough, while 50% of our Guard and Reserve make up the total military, only 1% of our total population ever serves in the military. Kind of an interesting number. I also will throw that out to you with all the people wanting to have a $15 an hour pay increase for somebody to wash dishes. How about giving the guy who's out there in a foxhole getting shot at 24/7, give him $15 an hour instead of the measly bucks they get, with many of them on welfare. So that's my grandstanding for tonight.
We never get grandstanding here, so
No,
that's very shocking to us.
I know. My wife was a mayor once, I can tell you. Yeah, and I spend little time on a city council, so I do know a little bit about it. However, what I'm here for primarily was to make a presentation to Jeff Roth from Joseph Twigg. Captain Twigg is with an Oregon National Guard unit. Actually, he's headquartered in Redmond, Oregon. And so he put his supervisor in. This is what we call a Patriot Award. It comes directly from the Secretary of the Defense. And we'll go to Jeff. But it also is to include the whole Sherwood Police Department. Joseph wrote, "My employer, supervisor, deserves this recognition because they and he have been extremely supportive. The Sherwood Police Department as a whole has had to put up with me being gone a lot over the last 5 years, not including IDT, and I'm going to throw acronyms out here, and I don't know them all myself. I spent 34 years, 7 months, 4 days, and 3 hours in the Army, and since I was mandatorily retired in 1991, the acronyms have changed 300 times. So I haven't a clue as to what some of them are. But IDT is basically their individual duty training. And that's weekends in their annual training. I have been on one training deployment and one combat deployment during that time. They have been extremely supportive of me and my family. When I was overseas, I received care packages from the department. Since returning from deployment, they have had to put up with my very demanding military schedule as a company level commander. Often I have had to make late notice schedule changes, and they remain supportive. During just the last year, I have been gone from work for Captain's Career Course, CNO/CAO, not a clue, a course, yearly training conference, drill, comet inspections, which are maintenance inspections, and many more requirements. As a small department, I know my absence affects everyone to some degree, and I greatly appreciate their support and understanding. Well, let me just say that this is extremely important to the Department of Defense. It's also extremely important to our nation. We need to remain strong. We are the strongest nation in the world. Recently, Mr. Putin admitted there's only one superpower left in this world, and the United States is it. And we try to do as much good as we possibly can. Now, we know that the impact on employers can be rather devastating when all of a sudden you've got a hole to fill. And it means that someone else has to pick up that duty. Or you have to hire someone extra to come in. The danger of hiring someone extra coming in is that when the person comes off a deployment, you've got to give them their job back. What do you do with the person you hire? So it becomes a two-edged sword, in a sense. So we are very, very understanding of the sacrifices that cities, businesses, and individuals make, not to mention the families of those that get deployed. So with that, the Secretary of Defense wanted to confer on Jeff Groff and the Sherwood Police Department a Patriot Award for their services, and I'll present it to you, Madam Mayor, and you get to, mind you, it's okay. I normally don't use a cane. I broke my hip in February, and I threw my back out last night. So I'm a mess. Okay.
Well, thank you. Let's
Okay.
give Jeff and the City of Sherwood a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Also, there's a handy-dandy lapel pin for him, and I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. Ash Carter, neat guy, by the way. I met him once. Don't always agree with the Secretary of Defense, but it's okay. This is a statement of support for the Guard and Reserve. And basically, it doesn't commit you to anything other than you'll do your best to try to support these soldiers. And if you would, it comes out of the frame, if you'd sign it, and for the City of Sherwood, we would appreciate your support.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll get it. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Can we play that video back when he comes back for him?
Oh, yeah. And
Just re-show it.
he'll get the video.
All right.
Again, we were planning that at your July 19th meeting, and obviously didn't communicate as effectively as we could have. So I'm
City
glad he
manager
actually was
report.
able to do that. So I have two quick things for the mayor and council. One, I want to remind everyone we will not be meeting in your normal first Tuesday of the month. I believe that's July 5th because of the July 4th holiday. So the next regular council meeting will be July 19th. Which is your second meeting. The other item, I wanted to have Craig Sheldon, our Public Works Director, come up and talk a little bit more about the boil water advisory that was issued late this afternoon for a portion of the town. That's a little unusual, and I'm sure that not only council members may have questions, but the public who are here or watching at home may have some questions about what triggered that, what does that mean? So, Craig, if you can explain that a little bit.
Thank you, Craig.
Sure. Thank you. So we had a pump failure at our Snyder pump station, which feeds the southeastern part of our community. So anywhere between Snyder Park and up on the hill off of Sunset. Really, we don't have a reservoir that we moved out in our master plan for this area. So it's fed straight from the pump station. So when you have a pump failure, these things are going to happen. And we had a pump failure this morning. We had a power outage yesterday that our generator run at the pump station, PGE. This morning we had a pump failure a little after 5 o'clock. We did receive a few calls, and really we had one resident say they lost water in their sink in the upstairs of their house. That's why you have a boil water notice. We show all signs of 40 psi in our water main, but we have to take precautionary measures. It's required by the state. Once you go below 20 psi, you have to do these things. So what this really means is there's nothing to be alarmed about today. It's more precautionary. Tomorrow we'll get the samples. We took 7 samples, which is a requirement. We took that this morning after we got the pump and everything back up in temporary running and parts ordered for it. Those samples will come back tomorrow around lunchtime, noon, 1 o'clock, I think. If there's positives, then we have to do more, and there will be a boil water notice go out and more sampling and more flushing of our system. But that's not what we're planning right now. We're planning that it's going to come back negative, and we're going to lift the precautionary boil water notice. It's really mandated by the state that we do this. So,
and Craig, this is a recent change, maybe in years past, because the rules are different. This wouldn't have been handled to this way, but
yeah, you see stuff in the paper now every once in a while, a little more often the last few years, about boil water notice because somebody lost pressure. And a few years ago, the state did change that, so there is more requirements that you have to do some of these precautionary things. So, which is good because you don't want anybody to get sick. But we have no reason to believe that there's contamination in our water system.
Thank you. Precaution is good.
Yes.
So thank you very much. Appreciate the explanation.
I did not have anything else unless you had questions either for myself or any of the directors that are here.
Okay, Council, any questions for staff?
I have a question, Craig. Where are the rest of our pump stations located?
So the reservoir.
How many do we have?
We have 3 reservoirs. They serve different elevations. There is not one in the upper elevation. There's scheduled in the master plan was for, I believe, a 1.5 million gallon reservoir, and to feed that area. So you would pump from that pump station. You'd have storage, but we don't have that. We moved that out several years for funding reasons. And then we have a couple different pump stations.
Thanks, Craig. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Joe. And so as was mentioned, Sally is not here tonight. Sally is actually recovering from a surgery, and so the Sherwood Hearts, I wanted to say, are with her tonight. We want to send out a great big Sherwood hug to her because we want her to get better very soon so that we can have her back. Sally does a lot for our community. She not only serves here, but she also serves as our liaison to the Planning Commission and has since her election. And that is one of the most arduous tasks. It means you have a meeting every single Tuesday night. So we thank her for her service, and our thoughts are very much with her as she recovers. So I wanted to send out a huge congratulations to the Sherwood High School graduates. We had a great big graduation for them, and that's very exciting. So I wanted to send congratulations to all those who graduated from Sherwood High School this year. Then we had some serious excitement. The Portland Rose Festival. That's right, we crushed it. So once again, the Sherwood Small City Float won what they call the Dick Powers Picture Perfect Award, and it's the Small City Float. Second year in a row, that's ours. We took it home. Thanks to this lady here and Michelle Babcock and Sandy. Lots of people help with this, but I appreciate Councilor Kuiper taking the helm on this one and really driving the bus. And it was a heck of a lot of fun. I even got a chance to work the barrels and the coffee grounds and the little actually it was hazelnut shells on top of the frog. It was super fun. Teskey's was there, and it was awesome. So another amazing community effort. I was so proud of our city and our citizens that all volunteer came out and just hit it out of the park. The Portland Rose Festival guys were super impressed with us. They really thought that we really did an amazing thing for our Robin Hood Festival, to highlight our Robin Hood Festival this year. We're very excited for Robin Hood Festival again this year, and it's very extra special because it's the 60th anniversary of the archery competition. So it's pretty great. So I'm very proud. I'm gonna let Kuiper boast like crazy because she deserves every second of it. But I also wanted to thank Michelle Babcock from the city, who also worked side by side with her and contributed mightily to the project. I also wanted to congratulate the Mixolydians for their second win for Best Choral Group as well. They were fantastic. I got to sneak out of the mayor's room and see them perform, and it's pretty spectacular to get them to see them perform in that huge arena forum. So it kind of makes everything sort of stand up. It's pretty fantastic. It's awesome. So congratulations. July 4th is coming up. I just wanted to remind everyone to be safe and to have a lot of fun with your families, but always make sure that you are staying safe and not burn down the town. Let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's just have some fun. On Wednesday, July 6th, it is going to be our first Music on the Green. I want to make sure that everybody knows that. First Music on the Green, 6:30 to 8:30 at Stell Olson Park. And the band is the Stomp City Soul. Stomp City Soul. So they should be fantastic. And I always look forward to this series. Hundreds of people come out. Two Kilts is going to be the beer this year. So that's our beer here in Sherwood. So that's pretty exciting as well. So come on out and have some fun with lots of your friends and family. So Robin Hood Festival, I talked about that. It's July 15th, 16th, and 17th. The Saturday is the parade. Friday, Kuiper is being knighted, and I'll be reading the proclamation. And Sunday is the archery competition. It's Saturday and Sunday, but it's the only event on Sunday, and that happens at Edie Ridge. I wanted to tell you that this Friday I will be having lunch with our federal Senator Jeff Merkley, and I'll be advocating for federal transportation funding. So that's the highlights from your mayor, Councilor President Harris.
Hello. So last night with Cultural Arts Commission, we spent I can't even put words to how fabulous it was evening on a working retreat. We went to a citizen's house who has the most incredible property I think I've probably ever seen in my life. He was featured in like Home and Garden and just crazy amount of time spent in his yard that I can't even explain. He actually has a little gnome garden where you walk through and he's got gnomes everywhere, and it's really awesome. But anyways, besides touring the property, we spent a lot of time discussing the future of the Cultural Arts Commission and talking about their mission statement. And the Cultural Arts Commission is going through a lot of changes. Many of the citizens on the committee have changed over. The last few years, the focus has been getting the Center for the Arts open and running. And since that's going, there's a lot of discussion about where we want to focus or where they want to focus, and a lot of brainstorming and discussing. And they picked 4 main areas that they want to focus on, including arts education and outreach and talked a lot about ways to partner with businesses to bring art to the average person and to our businesses and to work collectively with our downtown corridor, Old Town corridor, to bring arts to everybody, not just to people who think they're arty, because most people have the ability to be artists, even if they don't think that they're artists. Somewhere in there, they're crafty with something, whether it's video games or crocheting or hand painting. And so talking about ways to bring that out. They will continue over the next several meetings to fine tune and come up with a, I would say, solid mission and direction. And it's really exciting. They're using some other community mission statements and ideas to help bring it all together, as well as a focus on public art and getting some more public art in Sherwood. So that was a really fun evening last night that I enjoyed, and I think everyone enjoyed. And I look forward to continuing that process. So along those lines, the Art Walk is this Thursday. It is the Summer Art Walk, and if you haven't done an Art Walk in Sherwood yet, it's amazing. It's a family event. You bring your kids out, you stop in at the Art Center, you get your passport, you go around to the businesses. They've all partnered with an artist, which again is very much what we want to do, is partner with our businesses and bring people to Old Town for art and for commerce. So you go to the different businesses, you get your passport stamped, your kids, or you get to do different art projects that are there. Some are adult themed, some are children focused. And when you're all done, you bring your passport back and you get entered in a drawing for really fabulous baskets from businesses all over the community. So it's a really, really fun event. The weather looks to be great, which makes it even more fun and easier to participate with kids. I'll use that to segue into the library. The library will be participating in Art Walk from 6 to 8 o'clock, so you'll be able to come into the library and do some different activities that they set up every time we have the Art Walk. They have something fun going on. So come and do the Art Walk this Thursday. Also, June 28th, the Tuesdays at 2, free performances in Cannery Square start at 2 p.m. Adrian, can you help me say the one that's coming? Okay. I was trying to say it. It's Hootazilio Pochtili, but it's Aztec dancing. It will be here on Tuesday at 2 p.m. We can ask them how to say it because I don't know.
I like the way you said it.
Yeah, see, I'm sure it's right. I got the accent just down. Aztec dancing, Tuesday, 2 p.m. Those will continue through the summer, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. in Cannery Square. Also, another event that I think I would love to see continue year after year is the first bilingual story time at Stella Olson Park. That will be coming up. It's at Stella Olson from 11:30 to 12:30, but I forgot to write down the date. Next Thursday. And it is a joint effort with many different groups, the Sherwood School District, Helping Hands, Kumon, YMCA, the city. They're all getting together to create this bilingual story time. Lunch will be served, so you can go down there, hear a great story, have some lunch, and listen in Spanish and English. So, and there's crafts. Okay. Every Thursday, and you can always look online at our website to get the specifics. And
where is it at?
It's at Stella Olson.
Where?
Park. Down by the
picnic tables.
I regret to inform you that My Fair Lady will have created a green room, and that won't be available.
Okay. Yes, you'll see it. It'll be large enough there'll be enough people. You'll find it.
Or
wear your hiking shoes and walk through the park, and you'll find it. The library's closed 4th of July. That is a Monday, so keep that in mind. If your books are due on the 4th of July, you might want to drop them off early. And that's actually all I have tonight.
Thank you. Councilor King?
So I was just when's the monument removal going to start?
The what?
The monument removal on the street.
Oh.
Can't remember the dates on that.
Yeah, so they're still
finishing up the design. We're hoping to go out to bid here real soon. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Other than that, no.
Councilor Harris said she
I
had
did
one more
forget
thing.
to say, the mayor already
Sorry.
covered Music on the Green, but I did want to say that at the Center for the Arts annual gala, there were prize package given away for Music on the Green, where you get your seats set up for you, you get dinner, you get a bottle of wine. You'll probably see that group down there if you go, because they have fancy seats that they get to keep at the end of the season. But the city actually sets them up for them during the season, so they get prime seating. They don't have to get there early, and you could be the recipient of that if you come to our gala next year.
Good plug. Good plug. Okay. Councilor Kuiper.
Does everyone know that giant old tree that's at Woodhaven Park? The beloved old oak tree by the sandbox. That tree will sadly be no more in the next few months because it is diseased and needs to be taken out. So I just wanted to let everyone know that it's one of 8 large trees. But that's my first announcement regarding Woodhaven Park, because we have a bigger announcement, and that is the staff is getting ready to engage in a agreement with the constructor, a new contractor for the next phase of Woodhaven Park. So you guys should look for that to be started probably in September, October. What do you think, Kristen, Craig, for construction? August, September. So you'll be seeing a lot of action going along down there. So the bid came in a little bit over what was anticipated, the low bid, but we were able to work some things and take out a few things on the far end of the park that won't affect some of the wonderful amenities that families are going to really, really enjoy. There's some great amenities that will be constructed out there, some unique things I think everyone will be really happy with. So look for that to come. And then, of course, my big shout out to a huge core team, a big team for the mini float. This year, the Robin Hood Festival partnered with the city of Sherwood. The city, out of actually the city manager's budget, it was not the general fund budget, city manager's budget of $2,500. Well, okay, so the city manager's portion of the general fund budget of $2,500 really helped to build this float, which was almost $5,000 to build. I mean, this was and this was done with, over 100 hours of volunteer work. And at the risk of sounding long-winded, I did want to thank a number of people. Michelle Birchfield Babcock, who was a city staffer, was absolutely phenomenal. She loves float building. She's got the bug big time, and she dreams in bulgur wheat and every seed that you can think of. So true. I actually have nightmares about bulgur wheat and seeds and acorns and every other kind of seed that you can imagine. But was fantastic. She's a lot of fun to work with. She's the yin to my yang. What can I say? Sandy Wallace is a machine. She's out in the back there. The woman is tenacious and does not quit. I mean, she does not quit. She's amazing, and she was really helpful there every day during the float building. And Phil McGuigan also was part of the core team. We had Steve Overton and Marty Richmond and Jessica Tinch of the Puppet Museum. These guys are the ones that designed and built Friar Tuck. And if you didn't get a chance to see the mini float at the Grand Floral Parade, you absolutely will get a chance to see it at the Rose Festival Parade.
Robin Hood, other way
what
around.
What did I say?
Other way around. Robin
That's
Hood.
right.
It'll be at Robin Hood.
It'll be at the Robin Hood Festival Parade. Everyone will get a chance to see it. Phil Armini, Larry Souza, Tess Keys came for several days in a row and did spray painting and posted letters. Nancy Taylor was there. Tony Bevel, special shout out to you, Tony. Tony was pretty amazing. The Friday night, we work on this float at Bag and Stowe's Farms. They were wonderful for letting us have the space to work. It was very different than being in the Public Works building, which was open
to animals that would eat our seeds, and we would have to reapply things. But at Bag and Stows, we didn't have to do that. So it was a huge blessing to have the Bag and Stows family allow us to utilize the space. But Friday night, the night before the parade, Carla Stenberg, who is the mini float parade chair, allowed some of the floats to go down to downtown on Friday night, and we told her we would be there at 10. We're going to be there at 10 p.m. And we'll have everything ready. Well, Mark with Fox Towing, who was wonderful, the neatest man, very patient with us, came and waited for us until 1:30 in the morning, and it was starting to rain, and we drove that little gator sucker up on top of the Fox Towing, and Phil was still in the thing shouting out that he needed this, that, and the other thing, while Tony and I were getting rained on trying to batten down this thing. And we finally got the unit up onto the tow truck, went downtown, and Tony, thank you so much. He followed the tow truck, me and the tow truck, all the way down. We got down to downtown at 2:30 a.m. and Tony drove the thing off the truck for us and made sure everything was okay before he left and went back home. And I finally conked out at 3 a.m. and got up at 5. But that's the life of the mini float crew. Just a few more shout out. Michelle and Drew Crosby. Michelle and her son Drew Crosby came. Julie and her daughter Megan Nip were there to help. Julie and Paige Austin, Melissa and Sierra York, Karen from building department. I'm sorry, Karen, I cannot remember your last name. Dawn and Kari Stoddard, LDS elders Pugmire and Huntington were there. They were adorable, and they helped us do all the little animals on the float. And it was truly a community experience. I still remember Tess Keys showing up and Nancy Taylor showing up, and they looked at each other like, oh, okay. And they worked and helped Sandy work on the letters, and it was really a great community building team. And I think, Tess, you'd probably feel that way too. It was a really great effort, and it was definitely a way to bring the community together. I'm really thankful for that. Anyway, that was long-winded. I just wanted to say one more item. We have sign-ups for the Robin Hood Festival. We have over 146 volunteer positions that need to be filled on various tasks. I've followed Pat Allen's lead. He put together what's called volunteer spot for the beer garden. So if you're interested in working at the beer garden, he has a volunteer spot on his Facebook page, which I'm going to see if we can get that transferred and linked onto the Robin Hood Festival page. But I've also created a volunteer spot page with all the positions that need to be filled. I'll be posting that on various places on Facebook, maybe even put a link onto it on the Robin Hood Festival website for folks to participate. It's a great event, and it does take a lot of hands. So thank you. Thank you for the long.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Ross?
After all that, I can say it truly takes a village. So just a couple updates. I did attend the Main Street meeting. I think it's usually Councilor King attends, but I was there for other reasons. A couple of things were already announced, but I did want to announce the Wine Festival, which is this Saturday. It's at 503 Uncorked. There'll be lots of activities, wine vendors, but there'll be activities for the entire family. So I highly encourage you to, and music, yeah, don't forget the music. I also attended the school board meeting, and as most of you are probably aware, the main topic was the approval of the general obligation bond moving forward, which would be taking care of some safety situations, building and facility maintenance, curriculum offerings, technology, and building a new high school. Also at the meeting, the retirees were honored. So John Dickover, John Niebergall was honored, as well as Ms. Stefik for their service. And I want to do a shout out to Mr. Dickover. He stood up, and I've never seen or heard him speak so eloquently on behalf of something he was very passionate about. And he put forward an idea of naming the high school football field after the fallen officer, Officer Gooding. And again, never heard him speak so eloquently, so passionately. It brought the room to tears. So I was very proud of Mr. Dickover. Ultimately, the school board decided not to move forward with that idea. They're going to do something new. But it was awesome to hear and see the fellow staff support an officer that was a part of their classmates in high school. So it was really neat to watch, to witness. In the chamber world, we just finished up with the cruise in Sherwood, which was a success. Glad it's over with. But it was a success. Thank you to Counselor Henderson for all her help with finding volunteers. The next upcoming event for the chamber is June 28th. It's the annual awards dinner, and that will be held at the Center for the Arts, and that'll be 6:30 to 9. And I also wanted to recognize John Niebergall, who was honored with a Champion of Change award. So he was honored at the at the White House recently, so last Friday. And there was a celebration for him last Wednesday at Generations. Again, lots of teachers and staff from the high school that were there to honor him. But we are amidst of some pretty great people in this community. And when we witness those things, it just really shows us how blessed we are. That's all I have.
Counselor Henderson?
As we stated with Adrian, my Fair Lady will be opening next Wednesday night. I was thinking you might be able to do it on the stage. They told us no. Okay. So that is next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I'd like to thank the city. That's a great partnership that we do that show every year. And thank Public Works, Craig, for replacing the power box that flooded down there in a very timely manner. I appreciate that, which makes it usable for everybody who uses the park. We also have, for those people who don't know, in the picnic structure, we now have electricity.
Oh my gosh.
So you can come down with a hot plate or lighting and be able to enjoy or utilize that shelter a little bit better now since there's electricity in there. This week is another partnership between the Sherwood Foundation for the Arts and the city. We are doing Missoula Children's Theater this week at the center and have performances of Peter and Wendy on Saturday afternoon. We have the campus full, so we have 60 kids rehearsing there during the day, and then we'll have 2 productions on Saturday. The tickets are very reasonable at $5. And we also have stage risers at the center now, so that's a great addition to the center, making it usable and useful in many different ways for many different users. And we have a second week of Missoula Children's Theater at the center in August. August 8th through the 13th is Aladdin. So if you, I don't know, do we have any spots available? Mm-hmm. Or Peter and Wendy, sorry. Yeah, so if you missed out on the camp this week, you might be able to enroll for the camp in August. And then the Police Advisory Board met last week, and we continue to review, Michelle Miller was there from planning, continuing to review the language for recreational marijuana legislation that eventually, of course, will come up to council. And I have a question about the for staff on the status or progress on the retail space in the Cultural Arts Center.
So as you know, we've been advertising that lease space for quite a while. We've had a number of people interested, but probably the most 2 promising ones have been 2 local restaurants. They both have made proposals, and we have looked at them. One's way far ahead in the process. They've done a lot of their homework and understand the costs of trying to build that space out as a restaurant. So we're going to start negotiating with them here in the very near future, and hopefully we'll get someone in there before long.
Thank you. When will you decide?
Well, it really depends on the negotiations, how quickly they go. If we are able to successfully come to terms and enter into a lease agreement here, it could be, within a matter of weeks. Or if not, and there's more research that needs to be done on their part, it could take months. So it's hard to say, when you're actually entering to these contracts, there may be more due diligence that they need to do or the city needs to do in order to make sure that both sides are protected and there's a successful business in there at the end of the day. So.
And are you talking about the whole space?
Yes, both of them would like the whole space.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Question time, 'cause I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I just have a quick question about how to go forward on maybe getting an ordinance with regard to bees and pesticides. So I know some other communities have done that, not allowing pesticides that are going to hurt the bees. And I was wondering how we could get started on looking into that.
Joe, could you comment on that?
Well, we can look at what kind of pesticides or insecticides that we use currently. I know the city of Milwaukee just passed something related to that that would keep bees safe. So we could look at other cities to see what they're doing and then bring something back to council for your consideration, probably in a work session, a short work session. And then if the council wants to pursue an ordinance, we can do that as well. So, and that we can do that pretty quickly.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. Any disagreement on that? Okay.
No, I would definitely support
Okay.
that.
That sounds like an eye around here.
There has been, as some of you have seen, and I know Councilor Harris, you asked me whether the city has been spraying any time recently because people have been running into dead bees around town and the city has not been spraying.
Right.
That doesn't explain why the bees are dying, but it's not due to any spraying that we've done in
And I
the
think
recent
that's
past. So.
why I'm interested in this, because while we as a city can say we're not going to use pesticides that hurt or harm the bees, we don't have anything to stop a homeowner or an HOA from using those type of
That's correct.
pesticides in their trees and bushes and things. So if we could make it more formal, save the bees. Go chicken, save bees. I'm sensing a
Yeah, we have several honey makers in our city, not in our city limits, but on Parrot Mountain. And so I think that we definitely would
we'll
like
look
to
into it.
Would like
and
to see
it's
something.
becoming more common in other cities, and we'll bring something back for you.
All right, thank you. Fantastic. Thank you. We are adjourned.
You do have a URA meeting.
Oh,
sorry, you have a budget.
sorry.
You have a budget to do.
What? I don't-
On the URA,
Yeah,
you might want to take a
but we
break.
still
But
close, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Let's,
adjourning is the correct action.
Where's my? Oh, it's in the back. Okay. I was going to say, where did that? Thank you.
Is a listing of all the centers, and Sherwood is on there, and we always list the menu, and the activities program is on there, as well as some highlights that might be going on for the month.